So get your piece of wood for your motor sticks, something like that. Go ahead and cut out a motor stick. And you can knock these notches off. I definitely recommend whichever side you use as the top that you do that. The bottom isn't as critical, but you're about to see why it's important on the top. Because you're going to cut out these little locking gizmos here. Now what you see here is that this is a prototype kit, and I forgot to cut a second one of these. So we'll be back in the camera frame in a minute with the actual part. Okay, now that we have rectified that little situation, we have two of these. So what you do is you take this part right here, it's got the little interlocks, and you latch it in to the interlocks on this piece, just like so. So what we're going to do is we're going to glue this guy in. You have to pay attention to what surfaces touch each other, because those are the ones that you want glue on. And so we lock this guy in here. And then we take the other one and we repeat that procedure. I'm sorry, I'm not showing this on the frame. It should be. Here we go. Let's try that. In the camera frame. Something like that. There we go. So now we have that assembly. You can see how everything fits together. So we've got a little U channel. And notice the glue is not dry, so I'm messing it up. So let me dip some glue on there, or yeah, right, some acetone, not acetone, CA kicker. And now this piece should slide on just like so onto our motor stick. So we're just going to leave that piece on here for now, and we're going to go find our nose bearing and our piece of piano wire. Both of those are very important for the next step here. So you have your nose bearing. What I want you to do is take your piece of piano wire and just slide it through. And at the back you've got this little separation. It's hard to see, but you just slide this thing through the little mating notches of that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to set it on this motor stick, and we're going to glue it in place. So I'm going to take some glue here. I'm going to glue this guy on level with the front, but what's more important is that I just dropped the piece of wire. I don't know where it went. It went amongst everything and got stuck on a piece of tape. Meanwhile, the glue is drying, which is no bueno because we want to offset this guy a little bit. Alright, so what you want, I don't know if you can even see it, is looking at this guy. You want that wire angled off slightly this way. It's only a tiny little bit. You can see if you look closely, there's a tiny little bit of offset to it. Now, that glue has already hardened up, but that is not enough to secure that component in place. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a piece of this binding string. We're going to put down a drop of CA to hold it in place, and then we're going to wrap this a few times, and that is enough to hold it down. And make sure that you don't use up all of your binding string on this, because you've got to use it for the tail too, and it does not take a whole lot. Alright, so there's our nose bearing. I'm going to go get some wire real quick, some pliers, and we'll bend the tail hook. Amongst your parts templates, you have a little template for bending your wire rear hook. So there are some curved areas here. If you can get a hold of a pair of round nose pliers, those will let you do that. Otherwise, just make sharp bends on everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to follow what is shown on here. And I'll show you how I'm doing that in a minute. So I'm just using a pair of pliers, so I've got that bend. You can see what it looks like right there. And so next, I mark off the next spot on it. Like so. You can see it's following on around. Now this is the part where if you've got round nose pliers, they're really handy for making this particular bend. And that just gives you a nice rounded surface for the O-ring on your rubber motor to lock into. Just makes it a little easier for loading and unloading. And then last bend, because I'm in an artistic mood tonight, I'm going to make also with round nose pliers. Just because I like those nice rounded corners, and sometimes I fly in some pretty harsh conditions. Next thing, we'll go ahead and show you how to make the prop shaft while we're at it. So it is entirely done with your round nose pliers if you have them. Otherwise, you'll want to make a kind of squared off option. You can see right there. You can see what that looks like. And then make another bend here. Maybe. So our goal is just to center. So the reason we've done that, this jog right here, is to center the back in line with the prop shaft. And then come up here and you're going to want to slide a propeller on here. And actually at this point what I would suggest that you do is set this guy on here so you have a little bit of clearance back here. And then you can stick your finger a little bit out further, so give yourself some extra. And then hit this with your pliers to bend it over. Now you can take a pair of wire cutters, snip that, and it's good. And while we're at it, take out this piece of Teflon tubing, snip off a tiny little piece of it, and if I can get it into my hand. Now remember, this stuff is very skinny and it's not going to want to go on real readily, so you will have to fight it out with it a little bit. But if you persevere, it will eventually go on to the prop shaft. If you have a straight pin handy, you can ram it down inside there to fatten it out. but eventually you get that little guy on there. Maybe. There we go. So, be willing to struggle with it a little bit and you'll get a good result. And then just as a test case, I'm going to slide this guy back in. Use the crook of the prop here to get into the pigtail end back there. Maybe. There we go. And now it's in, and it spins freely. Alright, so let's go to the back. We're going to take this rear hook, and so what we're going to do is we're going to slip it in the center up top, and so I'm piercing it into the top of the motor stick. Just like that. Now you can stick a gusset down under here. I recommend that you do. I'm not going to because I'm feeling lazy at the moment. The main thing is get it with some glue and then run this binding in there, snap it down all the way, and what this lets you do is bind it in place so that it won't come out. Now, the next thing to do is we'll get set up to put our tail boom on in just a minute. Okay, I removed my wing saddle and my propeller, so I've got my motor stick able to lie down flat again. And now I'm going to snap one of these tail booms out. And the plans show about it's about 3/4 of an inch overlap here. The important thing is find something to line this up next to on the top so that the two of these are level straight across. And then over on this end, use your wing saddle oriented in this direction, laid down, to prop that tail boom tip up. So then what we're going to do is we're going to come back and we are going to line everything up there. And there we go. Now you'll notice this is taller than the thickness of our motor stick, so that means that the tail boom is angled off to the side a little bit. That gives you some left turn. So if you look closely, you can see that it isn't straight, and you don't want it to be. Let's slip our saddle back on here just to feel good about ourselves. And everything is looking good. So at this point, we'll proceed on to the landing gear. So I'll come back in a minute after I've cleared things off, and we'll step onto that topic. Okay, we're going to continue with the fuselage here. Forgive any outside noise. We are currently, as I'm filming this, we are in the middle of a major hurricane that's coming in, so that should be good fun. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our, and that noise is a dishwasher, not the hurricane. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our landing gear. So And make sure we have our baggie with parts here, because you're going to want to get out your 1/16 aluminum tubing and some of your polyamide tubing. And I just sent the Teflon tubing flying, so we'll set that aside. And I don't know where my piece of wire went, so that's a note to you to keep track of your wire. So we'll be right back, I'll track that down. So we have our wire. Next thing, I forgot to bring a ruler over here, so I'm going to do this super crazy way. You know that these sheets of wood are 4 inches across, so I'm going to cut some of my wood to that. And so I'm going to make 2 of these pieces that are 4 inches across. And there we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these and I am going to go ahead, you can use sandpaper or what have you, but we want it to fit over this piece of tubing. So you'll want to just keep rounding this off until it's small enough to fit in there. Your polyamide tubing should be a little bit bigger than this, so you shouldn't have to sand it down quite as much as you see me doing it. You should use sandpaper. I'm using a razor blade here. And that's just because I'm being super lazy with it. And we are just going to keep going with this until it's small enough to fit in there. Almost. And now it fits in there nicely. So, at this point we can cut this guy off. About a 1/4 of an inch long should be sufficient. And then we'll go up here and right at the center line of this wing saddle. And I glue this in place. There you go, like that. And you want that to be on the left side, so your bearing is here, those are on the bottom, so this is the left side of the airplane. And we can just glue it pointing straight up and down, and that will be good enough. And there we go. Now at this point you can go ahead and you can also cut off 2 more of these. That would make them the full length of that wing saddle, or the full height of it. And those are going to be your wing post tubes. You can actually go ahead and choose to mount those at this point. You want those to be straight up and down. And there are marks on here for aligning those. So what you want to do is just center it across those all the way up. And so that gives you the tube mounted there straight up and down. So we're doing it at the front, and again at the back. Forgive my son, he's a little enthusiastic right now. And there you go. So you can see, this is the arrangement we have. So I'm going to hit this with a little bit of CA accelerator. Those are now securely in place. So at this point, that landing gear leg fits in securely. And now, let me go get a ruler, because I'm going to need a ruler for the next step. Okay, so we're back with a ruler here. We can set the tubing aside. So we're going to take this piece, which is our other 4-inch piece, the one that we didn't round off, and we're going to put a mark here at 2 inches. I'm going to attempt to at least. I don't know if it's wet or something. There we go. Much better. And so at this point, we're going to take this piece, put the rounded end up, and we're going to glue this in place. And we're going to glue it at that 2-inch mark. And you can use like one of these pieces of wood to square it off of to have it parallel. And then go over here and break out one of your gussets. I broke out 2 oopsies. Glue that in the corner here, like that. Next thing we'll do is I'm going to take this piece of wire. I'm going to cut a pair of pieces of it that are 3/4 of an inch long. Should be using wire cutters, but oh well. I'll use them for this part. And then just take the very, very end of these and bend it over. So just, is it going to focus for me? Yeah, just that tiny little bit you see right there. That's all you need. It's about a 1/16 inch of it.
Yes.
Alright. Now, pop out 2 of your wheels over here. And then, let's see here. Now, we're going to ruin the good razor blade here. Good thing we're most of the way done with this build. You're going to take this razor blade and you're going to cut off a piece of this aluminum tubing that's about 3/32 of an inch long. And so what you're going to do is you're just going to roll this razor blade over that to score it, and then if you've scored it nice and deep, it will just break off like that. So let me show you. I'm going to do this one more time because we need 2 of these. So I'm rolling it back and forth like that. And now, you probably can't even see it, but I've got a score marked right there at my fingernail. So I'm going to bring the pliers up here to that, like that, and I can just gently flex it. Off it comes. Then, you may have to sand the end of this because it'll have some flashing on it, but you should, with a little bit of effort, be able to gently press that through the center hole on your landing gear. And then find some scrap piece of wood, squirt a little bit of CA on it, and slide that around in there. because you don't want to get it in the actual hole. These wheels are larger than what's required by the rules, so you will not have to worry about that. And then, come on, go in there. This one's wanting a little bit of encouragement, so okay, it's wanting a lot of encouragement actually. It will not defeat me. There we go. As I said. And I suppose you can hear our now very strong tropical force wind gusts out there. Okay, so that's now done. Before you glue this in, you're going to want to dip accelerator kicker on these so there's no chance of anything wicking back. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take these. So you slide the little axle through. The bent side is out here. I'm grabbing it on this side. I'm going to come in here to my landing gear, and I'm just going to push this guy through like that. So I'm just punching it into the side. Putting it in. Then I'm going to come back. I'm going to hit it with some CA. And I'm going to slide it straight back in there. Now, tip it over this way so the wheel doesn't fall back on that. And find something to dip some CA onto that. Or not some CA, some accelerator on that. Because we don't want the wheel to slide back and stick to that dab of glue there. The wheel turns freely. So now we're going to take the other one. Drop it in place. And so, same arrangement as before. I'll hold it up close to the camera. We're going to take this guy and we're going to just punch it straight into the end. Just like that. And we pull it back out and CA it in place. And actually, what I'm going to do is slightly different. I'm going to set that with accelerator, hit the wire with glue, and then we instantly harden it that way. Make sure it actually has hardened up. And then we slide our landing gear in. And there we go. Sits on its landing gear. Okay, that's all good. We'll go ahead and look in here and remind ourselves how long the wing posts are supposed to be. And we have a drawing that says the wing posts are supposed to be 1.5 inches tall. So take one of your strips out of here, and we're actually not quite going to do that. We're going to cut one of the wing posts to, did I say 1.5 inches? Let me make sure I read that correctly. Yes. Right, so we're going to cut that to 1.5 inches. And then the other one, we're actually going to shorten slightly. We're going to cut it to 1 3/8 inches. So that's 1.375. And that is going to be our rear wing post. And then you're going to want to sand these around. I'll be right back with some sandpaper. Okay, so I'm going to strip these with some sandpaper. And you don't need them sanded along their full length, but the bottom part you do. At that point, very close. So we'll take just a smidgen of material back off. And let's see, we want the longer one to go at the front. Still fits a little bit tight. And there we go. So we'll repeat the same thing for the shorter one that goes in the back. Okay, so we've got both of our wing posts here. So the next thing is cut yourself a pair of 3/4 inch tall posts. And these are going to be your stab posts. And go ahead and sand the ends of those the same way you did the ones for the wing. Okay, so we have we've sanded these to shape, and you can see how they're over here, they're rounded off. And I've cut a pair of 1/4 inch long pieces of tubing. And so I'm going to fit one onto each one of these stab posts. And one I'm going to attach to the airplane, and the other I'm going to stick in my little baggie because right now we can't do anything with it. So that one goes in there, and this one on the left, again on the left side, I mount the tube onto the tail. So landing gears like this, so I'm sliding along here, this I'm gluing on my side in the tube is what mounts to the motor stick. Make sure you don't get any glue in the ends so that it wicks up in there and hardens that tail plane in place, because your tail does have to be removable. The reason your tail has to be removable is because of TSA's funky rules this year that you have to have a certain size storage box for your airplane. I guess they've had that rule for a while, but still. Anyway, here it is, glued in place, and proof that, I broke the post off. Not the post, the tube, because the glue was not all the way hardened. Alright, it's in there, and now I can slide my post back in. Alright, so at this point we have one remaining item here, and that is to deal with this propeller. So there's a size limitation on your propellers. I believe it's 17 centimeter diameter. What I've got here is to trim it to 6.65 inches. So that gives me a radius of 3.325 inches, or a little less than 3 3/8 of an inch. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to line up the center of my ruler here, actually sorry you can't see that, with the center of the prop shaft. I'm going to come out here on this blade. I'm looking for that 3.325 area here, and I'm going to mark that. Okay, look this way. And then I'm going to come out here to the back of it. I'm going to put that same mark. Make sure I got it right up here. So then, I'm going to draw myself a line here, connecting those. So what I did is I drew a mark here and then one back here, and I've just kind of sketched across that. Now I'm going to take a pair of scissors. I'm going to trim that. Now if you like, you can come up here to the leading edge of the blade and you can come up with a nice little curve like that, or you can come with a little bit more of a curve like that. Looks kind of nice. Now take your piece that you cut off, take it over to the other side, and you should be able to now, if you line it up very carefully all the way around, you should be able to use it as a template to trim the blade and make sure that it does not slip. So you're squeezing very tightly to hold those against each other so they don't slip as you trim that loose. And then we'll just do that same deal over here with the leading edge of the blade, curve around, and now we have a pretty leading edge profile. We said it had to be 6.65 inches maximum diameter. I've got 6.6, so it's actually a little bit on the short side. A little bit extra in the back. If you measure from this point to this point, it gives you a little bit extra. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back here and I'm just going to trim a little bit off the trailing edges. So what I've done is, instead of this coming straight back, I've actually curved it in very slightly. I know that doesn't really show up, but it's just enough that now when I measure from the trailing edge to trailing edge, I get just under 6.65 inches. I've got a ruler that's in tenths of an inch, so it allows me to take those measurements really effectively. And now our propeller is done. Because it feels good to do so, we can slip it on here. And now propeller is in place. Everything looks super duper cool. We can admire it. You can run around the room and make airplane noises if you like. So we're going to set everything aside here, and then we will get started with covering the wings.